The girls in Miss Janeway's class flocked out of Sunday school together, chattering like the first robins that could be heard in the orchard back of the church. "Did you see that lovely flowered ribbon in the window of the millinery shop?" Janet Graham exclaimed. "I'm going to ask Mother if I can't have my Easter hat trimmed with it. They have ever so many new flowers, too," Molly Arnold broke in. "Little bunches of artificial wildflowers and wreaths of daisies and sprays of lilacs. I want a white leghorn hat trimmed with lilacs. I think it is such a nice fashion to have a new hat for Easter. It makes one feel just like the spring, all dressed up new for Easter Day. That is what Miss Janeway spoke of today in class, wasn't it? She said we were to think of Easter as the time when the old things were made new." Janet considered a minute. "Yes, I know she said that," she assented. "It seemed strange to me, though, for Miss Janeway never does seem to think very much about getting new clothes for special occasions. She's going to wear her blue serge suit and her winter hat for the Easter service, even if she could have silk and satin if she wanted them." Janet puckered her forehead into a puzzled frown as she spoke. But just then, Miss Janeway appeared in the chapel door, and the girls rushed over to crowd around her. She was not much more than a girl herself, the daughter of the rector, and fresh from college. She was full of the rare charm that comes from forgetfulness of self, and her plain clothes only served to enhance the slender grace of her figure. The soft glints of her simply coiled brown hair, and the lights of her deep hazel eyes. She made blue serge take on the regal lines of velvet through the charms of her own winning personality. No wonder her class in Sunday school loved her. She walked toward the street, the girls flocking to her like a swarm of bees flying about a flower. "I heard what you were talking about," she said laughingly. "You are all going to blossom out Easter Sunday like a garden. Of course you will look very pretty, but what, for instance, is the need of Janet's covering up her lovely hair with all that ribbon she is thinking of having on her new hat? And Molly doesn't need blue lilacs, for her eyes are just that color. Do you know, girls, I have just loved those tam-o'-shanter caps like your coats that you have worn lately. They look so simple and girlish. Easter comes early this year, and you could just as well wear them a little longer," she finished persuasively. Hope Dunbar looked up timidly now, a flush of excitement lighting her pale little face. There had been hard times at Dr. Dunbar's since he had been called to service in the army and left Hope and her mother with very little to keep the home until his return. Hope touched Miss Janeway's arm. "I think that is such a sweet thought of yours," she said, "but everyone does always wear something new for Easter. You spoke about it in class today. You said the old things shall be made new." Miss Janeway's face lighted in the way that the girls always said made her look like one of the church window angels. She seemed to be looking far off as she spoke. "Yes, that's what Easter means," she said softly. "Old branches living again in apple blossoms, and buried bulbs sending up crocuses and tulips and Easter lilies, and dead hearts living again in faith and the resurrection. Don't you see, girls? We've had the wrong idea about it for ever so long." They had reached the gate of the rectory now, and Miss Janeway turned to the members of the class who were still about her. "Come in and let me make you some tea," she said. "I want to talk things over with you and see if we can't plan an Easter different from any that we have ever had here in Maywood." Grouped around the open fire in the living room and enjoying tea and crisp toast and strawberry jam from dainty rosebud china, the girls talked and began to understand and made plans. "There's ever so much that's old in my house that I can make over, just by helping," Hope said. "I don't mean the carpets and the paint, for that would take money, but Mother's old worries about how she was going to get anything new for me for Easter. I shall just tell her that I am not going to have a new hat. And there is her backache, from doing all the housework since we have had to get along without a maid. I didn't think I could spare the time from my school homework to do the dishes, but I will, and iron and dust and make the beds too." Hope ended with an energetic nod of her curly head. Miss Janeway put her arm around the little girl and drew her close to her. "I think that will be a most beautiful way to make Easter blossom in a house," she said. "No new things could be better than thoughtfulness and loving helpfulness. Now, girls, I leave it all to you," she said as the early spring sunset lighted the windows, and it was time for them to go. "Tell the others and go to work, every one of you, to see how much you can find in this town to make new for Easter." It was such a different way of thinking about Easter that the girls forgot all about their clothes, except that those who were to have had new ones obtained permission to use the money their mothers would have spent to help out the wonderful plan. They held meetings at their different homes after school and on Saturday, and Maywood began to be surprised into a new kind of blooming, different from that of its orchards and lawns and hedges. Hope's example was such a good one that those of the girls who found the need, and there were a good many, tried to bring about some Easter blossoming in their own homes. "Mother hasn't had a new dress in a year," one girl confided to Hope. "She always gets something pretty for me instead. But I am just making her buy cloth for a dress, and I know I can help her make it." Window boxes appeared to make the fronts of bare houses more attractive. The girls raked the dead leaves from lawns, set out plants, cleaned up rubbish in the schoolyard and in the park, and a few very courageous ones painted their front fences. Janet and Molly and Miss Janeway took the leadership of the movement and tried to discover special kinds of Easter service that the girls could do. More than Miss Janeway's special class had become interested, so there was quite a group of girls to draw upon. "The books in the Sunday school library do look so badly," Miss Janeway said one day. "The covers are torn and soiled. The new covers have come, but no one seems to have any time to take off the old ones and put on the new." "We'll do it Monday afternoon," Hope decided, "instead of having our regular basketball practice." And they did. When the many hands had finished, the library was fresh and neat for Easter. The rows of cleanly covered books lent a distinctive brightness to the room where they were kept. "I went by the hospital today," Janet said, "and so many children were looking out of the windows in the children's ward. They are the getting better, but not well kiddies. And just think, they will have to stay there over Easter." She thought a moment. Then she spoke eagerly. "We girls could go and tell stories in the children's ward on visiting days, and keep it up all the spring," she exclaimed. "That would be something new and different for them." The story hour in the hospital worked wonders. When small Peter, who had been in bed for weeks with a fractured leg, heard the story of the little lame prince and realized what patience in pain can work, he began to gain. "I don't know what's come over Peter," the nurse in the ward said to Janet one afternoon as she was leaving with her fairy books. "He's so good and so quiet." "I know," Janet said. "He's spending his days way up in the clouds on a magic carpet instead of in bed, and so he doesn't feel his splints, and he's getting well faster." It was quite true, and the same miracle thing happened to the other children. They left the ashes of their everyday suffering with Cinderella and danced with her at the ball, whose joy was a veritable tonic to them. Stories of outdoors, stories of adventure, and stories of achievement helped the little convalescents to see the good, new things that awaited them when they should be well enough to leave the hospital. And the vision helped them to get well faster. The girls enjoyed the story hour as much as the children. They had never realized before how a beautiful story could make the one who heard it see life with a new vision. Molly discovered the last work for the girls. "Old Mr. Burns, who has the greenhouse, is so worried about his Easter trade," she told the girls about 10 days before Easter. He lost all his help when the men enlisted, and he can't get anyone to help him. He says that he depends so much on the money he makes selling Easter plants to keep the greenhouse going the rest of the year. "We'll help him," Janet announced. So the girls put on their campfire suits and went to Mr. Burns's assistance for every afternoon of the week before Easter. It seemed the happy climax to all their efforts as they worked in the rich, earth-smelling loam and listened to the old man's homely philosophy about his growing things. There couldn't be anything much more discouraging looking than a rose bush shoot when you first started, he said, or a lily bulb. But all they need is a little encouragement, and the first you know you have roses and lilies. His words made the Easter message come true for the girls. Every year the earth, right there in their own town, was holding and cherishing old things and sending them up new. The girls washed flower pots and carefully potted tulips, hyacinths, and daffodils under the old florist's direction. As Easter drew near, they cut great odorous violets and bunched them in soft paper in boxes. They delivered the potted and cut flowers and passed and repassed the milliner's window countless times without once thinking of the artificial flowers there, ready for Easter hats. It had been the happiest Easter season that they had ever known. Then it was Easter itself, come on birds' wings through blue skies before they knew it. No one was ready for the day, as they always had been before, with new frocks and shoes and ribbons and gloves. Each girl in Miss Janeway's class was prepared, though, in a new way. Hope Dunbar put this into words as they all met in the choir room before they marched into church for the Easter service. "How nice we all look in our old things," she exclaimed. "I feel Easter so that it really seems as if I am really dressed up for it." The light shining in through the colored windows, the sweet odor of the flowers that banked the church, and the music that rang out with Easter joy and faith seemed more beautiful than at any Easter service before. There were so many flowers, too, a bewildering profusion of color, massed at the front of the old church. Old Mr. Burns, dressed in a neatly brushed black suit, sat in one of the front pews, and the girls had seen him talking to Miss Janeway before they marched in. They both looked mysterious and happy. When the service was over, the girls discovered the reason. As they filed out, the old florist took his place by the flowers and gave each girl a pot of Easter blossoms to take home. It was part his offering and part Miss Janeway's. As the girls went out, almost hidden by the tall lilies, bright geraniums, and purple hyacinths and heliotrope, they made a gay Easter pageant of bloom and beauty. Janet pulled her old cap down over her braids as a puff of wind met her at the door. She hugged her pot of geraniums tighter. "Who wants an Easter hat," she laughed, "when they can have Easter this way?"